on me and then both of us. So by looking at that camera?
Yeah, if you want to look at the camera or look at her.
I'll look at both, yeah. You tell me when?
Yep,
cool. All right. 3, 2, 1. Okay. Hey everyone, talafa lava malo de soifua maua malilangi mama. Thank you so much to everyone that has been... Can I do that again? Because I don't know why I introduced myself in Psalm 1:4. You're not even Psalm 1.
No, do it.
No, you're not even Psalm 1. I'll do that again, okay? 3, 2, I don't know, but anyway. I always do that when I have Psalm 1 guests. I don't know why I thought you were Psalm 1. Oh, thank God.
I could identify as someone.
You could. Okay.
So that's how you're going to see it?
Yeah. Nick, you have your own merch?
Yeah.
Okay, I want to get some.
I have like none there, so I don't do it at the moment.
Oh, okay. Well, next time you have a drop, I'm getting some. Okay.
Go.
All right. Hey, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning into the Tima Talks podcast. Welcome back. I am excited to have Millie here. Millie is a very interesting person in a good way. In a good way. And I'm excited to have her on. It's been a long time coming. We were supposed to do this ages ago, but you know, life is full on.
It's
Yeah.
hard. It's hard.
Yeah. And she doesn't need an introduction from me because she's very well spoken and she's amazing. So she's going to introduce herself. So thank you so much for joining me.
I'm gonna stuff it up.
No, you're
Said
not.
that I'm good at introducing myself. and
No,
I
no.
don't know.
Come on, let's go. Tell us a little bit about you. Welcome to the Tima Talks podcast, first of all.
Thank
And
you.
then tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, thank you for having me. I don't know how to put myself in a box. I just do things. I don't know.
Yeah, okay. Well, you share memes online. We're not going to talk too much about that. I think that's pretty entertaining. You are a political commentator.
Yeah.
Talk to us about that. How did you get into it?
Okay. Well, I'm a donor-conceived daughter of lesbians.
No way.
So basically, I made my way into the political realm going against same-sex marriage for the reasons of children and their welfare and their individual rights. So very full on. I sort of got thrust in there. So
Yeah.
I've just sort of dabbled, I guess, in different issues in society since then. And anytime there's been a grievance, I suppose, I've just spoken up about it. And in the meantime, I just post memes.
Yeah.
So,
Well, that's good because so many people talk a lot of crap online or, behind the scenes. And you're very upfront. You got a spine. So I really admire that about you.
thank you.
Yeah. I could just sit here and compliment you all night. But yeah, what else do you get up to? I mean, like, I don't know. What else? What's your favorite food? I don't know. Tell us a little bit more. Come closer to the mic, man.
I know, man.
Yeah.
I'm kind of awkward as an individual.
No, you're not. Okay. Okay.
So what do you do? I don't know.
Yeah, what do you do? What line of work are you in?
I am a researcher at the moment
Oh,
for
nice.
the Aussie Wire. So I do that for the most part.
Yeah.
Just getting stories of things that are going on in the political space. Yeah, I guess I've dabbled a little bit in politics myself. I ran in the election to get someone else elected. So that was kind of interesting, a little bit feral. Other than that, I'm just...
Regular schmegular girl. Yeah. Regular Aussie girl. I love that. So your mom, so you're a donor baby for a lesbian couple.
Yes.
And you were against same-sex marriage.
I was.
Why? Well, you think
I
I think
can
you're
never
like a
just glaze over that one, can I?
no, but like that's so interesting. Like, so you don't have you just mums.
Okay, so
let's go.
I do know my dad.
Okay.
We met when I was 11.
Okay.
But that was after years of me just having back-to-back tantrums about who I was and just my own personal identity. So a lot of the reasons that I stepped up and said no to same-sex marriage was because I didn't believe that intentional motherlessness and fatherlessness
100%.
should be normalised.
100%. Yeah.
And so, there's a part of me that goes, I'm not necessarily full-fledged against same-sex families, but I do think that there's a big grey area as to how it's done and how it should be done to be more healthy for a child comparatively. So, like in the donor conception community, there are a lot of us that do have access to our biological parents.
Okay.
And those kids tend to be quite well-adjusted as opposed to the kids that have anonymous donors from the sperm bank.
Yeah.
And so, the donor conception network is like a big one online. There's a lot, and it's not just for LGBT families or kids from those circumstances. It's just across the board, IVF, you know what I mean? So a lot of us have a grievance with not having our, family background.
Right.
And we don't like, for the most part, being a product of any kind.
Okay.
So for me, I was actually quite fortunate in the sense that my parents knew my father from high school, and there was no financial transaction in the relation to my conception. But one of the main things that kids have an issue with is that they are basically a product to be bought and consumed, and the donor is a checklist of attributes. And so it's really hard for a lot of people in that position. And, to intentionally fracture the family unit does not seem to have a positive impact on children. And for me, when I stood out against it, the reason why was because I saw an ad from the LGBT lobby saying that kids don't care who their parents are. And it just flipped something in me.
Would have triggered you, yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, you know what? I don't care. So, I was an atheist at the time, and I went to Canberra with the Australian Christian lobby. I just went hand in hand with them and said, you know what? Whether or not you guys think my voice is being exploited, this is what I have to say about this, and I don't agree with it. And I think unless we're going to have a mature discussion about what is best for children rather than the desires of adults, we should not be changing the Marriage Act, which as a consequence changes discrimination law. Yeah. So, yeah, that's the best way.
What was your upbringing like?
How do I even answer that?
Oh, okay. Well, if you're not comfortable with answering it, it's fine.
No. I tend to lean into discomfort.
Sorry, if you could just bring the mic close,
Yeah,
just move it to that side. Yeah.
Like that?
Perfect.
Is that good?
Perfect.
Yeah. My upbringing. I would say I was pretty lonely in my own head a lot of the time. And there are a lot of quite adult concepts that I had to adapt to at a very young age. And a lot of my emotional needs were not met as a result of that.
Okay.
So it's very different now, being raised in a gay family as to what it probably was back in the 90s.
Yeah.
And it wasn't because conservatives would come and, reject that as a concept or anything else external, but navigating, the fact that I was fatherless was extremely challenging, as it is for all children, especially like with divorce, abandonment, death. These things are all quite similar. And what I really detested about the narrative from the LGBT lobby groups was that they were trying to say that being born into an LGBT family was somehow special and different for a child who's experienced loss, when I actually think that kids that have experienced loss of a parent of any kind, we have a lot in common. Yeah. So, sort of how I figure.
Wow. I won't go too deep into that because, I won't. So we'll move forward. But thank you so much for sharing that. I had no idea.
Yeah. I don't shout it from the rooftops.
What was it like? I mean, well, actually, I will ask one more question. What was it like, explaining to your mums and saying, oh, I'm going to go and with this Christian party and we're going to go against same-sex marriage. What was that like?
I've always been very independent. So
they were like, yeah, whatever? Or?
It was more, it's my story and you'll either support me or you won't.
Okay.
Up to you, but I will be doing it anyway.
Okay.
And so, my biological mother, she was all right with it. My non-biological mother, not as much. I think because it was very hurtful to her. And she felt, I think in part that I was saying that I don't love her to some degree by doing what I was doing.
Yeah.
Which is fair, but on the same token, it is my story. And even though it's uncomfortable, and I'll try and do it as gracefully as possible and with as much respect for my family as possible, it's what's right. And I will always do what's right at the end of the day. So, yeah.
Cool. I love it. Thank you so much for sharing. Really appreciate that.
Oh, you're welcome.
Let's recap about the protest that we went to last week, which was really, I had a good time. I know I wasn't there for a good time, but I actually really enjoyed it, and I thought it went really well. What are your views on it? How do you think it went?
I think it was really good. I think Yusra did a really good job putting it together. So.
I didn't do anything. It was all Yusra.
Well, you know, it's a bit of a group effort with
Yeah.
the people that organise the rallies and whatever else. But, you know, she's quite passionate. And so she sort of selected pretty good speakers, I believe, and you were one of them. So,
was?
yeah.
I refuse to share it though.
Why?
I don't know. Please, if you've got a copy of my speech, do not ever post it, please.
I'll tell you what, Yusra's went bonkers on TikTok.
Oh, yeah, I know.
It went so viral.
Even on my, even because I shared Yusta's podcast, her speech on my timeline. I got so many followers out of that, so many likes, saves, shares. Oh, it was good.
Yeah, full on. I think it's pretty funny as well because oftentimes she won't speak and she doesn't want to, but then people will drag her up on stage. It's like viral.
Yeah, I know. Exactly. And I saw that, I think it was Beck, is that her name? Shout out to Beck.
Yeah.
Is that it? Yeah. Shout out to Beck from Melbourne who was mistakenly taken by the police. And that was, I was literally protesting and I saw them take her. I was like, she's part of us. What are you doing?
Yeah. You know what I think it was? I think that she said something. She said chant, like, I think we're queer, and the cops are like, oh no,
cool. Yeah. Well, it's good to know that the cops actually will protect us, you know, especially for our next protest that's going to take place. So it's good to...
Yeah. They've since improved a lot of their tactics. Like, you get a few ferals here and there, like the guy standing behind the bike that... I don't know, I was in the middle of the scuffle, so like, you know, us girls, when we're at a protest, we just break it up, like if there's any sort of conflict.
Yeah.
But yeah, one of the police on a bike was sort of just having a crack at some older woman that was mouthing off, and I sort of go, you know, like, you don't really need to provoke people. They're passionate.
Yeah, exactly.
Your job is to be somewhat bipartisan, so let's stay in our lane.
Yeah.
Shall we?
Yeah, 100%. I agree. No, that's awesome. And I thought it was a really good day. I was really nervous leading up to it. Like, I was like sitting on the train, I was listening to gangster music, trying to hype myself up. I was like, oh, what's going to happen? But it was fine. I had a really good time. So shout out to Yusta, all the speakers that were there. Honestly, it was an amazing job. And the next one will be in Parramatta in September, and I'm excited for that one too. Let's talk about the inappropriate book, Welcome to Sex. So I think it's a pedo book. I think it's the biggest child grooming book. I think Yumi Stein should be ashamed of herself, and every single person that supports it, you need to report yourself to the authorities. What do you think about it?
Ooh, so I just got off the phone with my mum because I was like, you know what? I'm going to pick her brain just about my experience growing up as a kid and being introduced to sexual concepts and whatever else. And, you know, she's hard left.
Oh, wow. And what are you? Like, are you like middle, right wing?
Well, being from, you know, that stock, I was raised quite left.
Yeah.
And then I've made my way to the right.
Okay.
And I think a lot of us on the right these days are former lefties, and, you know, the left in what it used to be.
Yeah, me too. I would say I was too, yeah.
Exactly right. So, you know, anti-farmer and government corrupt, all that sort of stuff. We have the same attributes as what the left originally had.
Yeah.
We're just now on the common sense side of the fence, the way that I look at
yeah.
it. So, you know, I spoke to her about it, and we sort of came to a couple of conclusions. With me personally, I wasn't introduced to any literature surrounding sex and the how-to aspect of sexuality, probably until I was around 14 to 15. And that was just a natural progression that came with curiosity, right? So I think there's a big proponent of this where you have to meet kids where they're at.
Yeah.
And when you do experience children that have curiosities, it has to be handled a certain way. Now, I think a popular argument coming from the people that have released the book and the people that are in support of the book, more importantly, is that kids are exposed to pornography and a whole bunch of other smutty things in general.
Yeah,
and so we should somehow just let it go. And you know, I'm with you on that. I think that the fact that society is now degenerate is not an excuse to further
100%.
aid in that degeneracy. So my mum doesn't really like Yumi Steins anyway. Like she actually blogged about her at one point.
Oh, your mum's a blogger?
She's an artist. Like
amazing.
Lefties, you know.
Yeah.
They're all art students.
I didn't even know who Yumi Steins was. I didn't even know who she is. I just know that she...
Yeah, she's pretty out there.
What is she? Like, is she a chef? I think I looked at her Instagram. What does she do?
She's just been an influencer in that space for a very long time. And, you know, the Welcome to Sex book is part of a greater series.
Oh,
So-
right, because she did the Welcome to the Period.
Yeah,
one.
welcome
okay.
to periods, all of that.
Yeah.
So, you know, I've sort of, as I'm formulating my opinions on this, I've had a look at the history of what she's sort of done. And in particular, Melissa Kang as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I grew up on Dolly Doctor, you know, as a teenager.
On, what, Dolly?
So Dolly Magazine.
Dolly Magazine, yeah.
So she was the former Dolly Doctor. She's a GP.
Yeah.
So I actually found as a teenager, Dolly Doctor was really quite informative because it was just an open space where us, the readers of the magazine, could submit questions and have them answered in a very sincere and honest way.
Yeah.
Without all this sort of grooming,
Yeah.
weird sort of left-wing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Here's the thing: the book is not aimed towards. I wouldn't have a huge problem with it if it was aimed towards people who, young people who are 16 years and over, 14 even.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, because you're young, you're a youth, whatever. But this is aimed at 8-year-olds. It's literally, or am I?
This
Is it or not?
This is the thing. There is such a grey messaging here when it comes to what is the target audience for this book. And probably my primary issue with the book is that it's marketed officially for 12 to 16, but you've got Yumi Steins in a post saying a mature 8-year-old could have a flick through.
Yumi Steins, you're dead wrong. Yumi Steins, you're dead wrong.
You're like,
There's no
nope.
such thing as a mature 8-year-old.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
So, you know, on that front, I sort of go, okay, this book in its entirety should actually be marketed to parents. It should not be marketed to children because obviously we live in a society where children have, and in particular young adolescents, they have different levels of emotional maturity.
Yeah.
So on what planet would we actually generalize one book, which is basically an instructional, it's not wrong in that department.
Yeah.
Why would we then market that to every child and call it a day?
Yeah.
I think I take an issue with that. I think there's a very big element of intellectual laziness. And in particular, I was reading segments of the book and
did you buy it?
No, I just bloody looked it up. I'm not going to add to her profits.
No way.
Absolutely
no
not.
way.
Nope. You know, but it's all available there, like in picture form from the actual book. So I'm pretty confident that's what I read. That's what it is. I took issue with a few things in the way that it's structured. One is that the illustrations for the book are very clearly marketed at juvenile individuals. Mm-hmm. That's not something that I would say is professional or clinical in any way, as opposed to, like, when you put it in contrast, the books that I was given as a teenager, you know, they were quite clinical in nature. The illustrations were quite minimal. There was no real graphic detail. In terms of, you know, some of the images of the penises, I found to be quite jarring. And I'm an adult, you know, that's not like a new concept to me. But looking at that, I thought, oh, like if I'm a little bit uncomfortable and I find that to be a little bit confronting to look at as a grown adult, I can't imagine how kids would feel. And in particular, the detailing in the differences between all of the penises I found to be quite, you know, it's like they really want to hook people in to examine.
Yeah.
And, you know, in fairness to some of that, a lot of that seemed to be in context with size doesn't matter, which I think is in a way very important as a principle for people to be raised with, because men obviously are quite sensitive about that. Mm-hmm. But in saying that, does it have to be this graphic? I don't know, you know?
No, it doesn't.
Exactly. So, you know, from a marketing aspect and with how graphic it is, I just found for that to be the theme without parental supervision or guidance, it doesn't sit right with me.
Yeah.
The other thing I had an issue with, and this is probably the major one, is the normalization of anal sex.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
Now, you know, as adults, we know that anal sex is actually quite high risk for many reasons, but one of which being that it can cause injury to the human body if done incorrectly. So, you know, a lot of these concepts are really quite advanced adult concepts, but from the get-go reading it, I actually might pull it up so I can quote her verbatim, because I saved the page and I just thought it just jarred me some type of way.
Yeah.
It seems to be quite positively geared in terms of the language surrounding anal sex. So I'm trying to do this with the microphone. So, everyone has an anus. It's located in a sensitive part of the body, and touching the skin around the anus can be a huge turn on. Now,
what a mature 8-year-old needs to know what turn on means?
What's a turn on?
Exactly.
I think the better word for that would be arousing, right? But straight away, alarm bells and red flags, because I'm going, okay, we're straight off the bat, anal sex is amazing.
Yeah.
So is that to say that that's a normal expectation in a partnership as well? Like the fact that she's gone into detail about the fact that the area has to be clean and that it can be painful, but she's not expanded on why or how it's painful, right? So we've got like a grey area here that she's created. She's opened the door to the topic of anal sex, right?
Yeah.
And then she's actually done it half justice. If you're going to introduce anal sex as a concept, first things first, young women getting into relationships, experimenting with partners as teenagers, right? Let's just call it the teen sort of years. To have that door open and pitched as though expectation of anal sex is normal, I have a massive issue with. Children are very open to exploitation. That is an advanced sexual act. I don't believe that anal sex is not complicated. Even if we were to just say, all right, everybody's queer now, this is normal, wouldn't you just actually expand on the dangers of it? And the fact that, no, it's not actually a normal expectation. If you happen to want to go there at some point, that's cool, but it's not something that should be immediately expected in a sexual interaction.
Yeah.
Even if it is for the LGBT kids.
100%. And honestly, I've seen so many posts online of people buying the book, like people who are on our side, buying the book and burning it, spitting on it, just trashing the whole book, which I agree with them. I didn't do it, but
I would rather trash it on merit, and I think the real issue here is that it's marketed to children. It's vague, but positively geared to advanced sexual concepts without getting into the nitty-gritty.
What does your mum think about it?
She agrees with me on this.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Especially when we were talking about the anal sex part. She's like, TMI. But she was just basically like, I was reading a study recently that, the female muscles do not actually recover as well as male muscles. And these are like, and unbeknownst to me, I'm not interested.
Yeah, me neither. I've never gone there.
But, the fact is that there's sort of a science around that, if you will, and it's been completely ignored by her, but promoted by her at the same time. And if you're going to do something, wouldn't you rather do it correctly?
100%.
And also, in relation to Melissa Kang being the former Dolly Doctor, she should know better.
She should.
She should. And it should be, if it's going to be an instructional, don't half do it.
Yeah.
Give credit to the dangers of these sexual practices, of which there are.
Yeah.
No mention of STDs either.
HIV.
Where's the condom information?
Yeah.
That's not like that's died out with the culture. That's still very much a real and present risk to people. So
and I saw one of Yumi's videos, and one of her followers tagged her on. One of her followers made a video. They were saying, well, kids are exposed to porn anyway, so why don't we just have this book as a safe resource that they can navigate porn. Take the porn away from. What do you mean? You're gonna allow kids to watch porn? Are you kidding me? The way that they're trying to justify it, it's sickening.
And you know what? There should be standards with this anyway.
Yeah.
Even when I was little, right, we had this. I was a Mac user in terms of computers, and there was a lovely program called Content Barrier, of which my parents could put in keywords and concepts and websites that I couldn't look at. Now, obviously, there's loopholes to it.
Yeah.
And I bloody found some of them with a friend of mine, and we were laughing.
Yeah.
But we got a stern word about that.
Yeah.
When she checked the search history, and she's like,
Yeah. What is this? What are you doing, Millie? What's going on? Yeah.
Us as 11-year-olds, we're sitting there pissing our pants
laughing.
But, the oversight factor seems to have dropped off largely as a standard with parents. And, when we're going to look at the outrage behind books of this nature, the fact is that we've got to be honest with ourselves. Are we taking responsibility for our children's sexual education and what they're exposed to online?
Yeah.
If the answer is yes, probably you're going to be a lot less worried about books like this because you're on top of it and you're quite diligent with your children.
Yeah.
You've got some form of open dialogue. But I think, you know, there are a lot of parents that don't. And so is it because you feel like you're not in control of what your kids are exposed to? Is that where some of the concern comes in? And then on the flip side of that, you've got the lefties who don't care at all, which is so much worse.
Yeah, 100%.
You know? So I think there's a message to take away from this, and that is that as parents, you've got to just be diligent. You have got to start paying attention, even if perhaps you previously didn't. Now's the time to start asserting control over what your kids are exposed to and opening up those dialogues.
100%. I love that. I've done a few episodes on, this is not in relation to the book, what kind of is, but I've done a lot of episodes about drag queen performances in in libraries. What are your views on that? Everyone that watches me knows my views. Everyone knows I'm against it. And I haven't asked many people about it, but, you know, what are your views on that?
I haven't yet met a drag queen that believes that they should be anywhere other than dive bars and like performances.
So the ones that you've met are normal.
There's a real split in the gay community, man. The old school gays, they wouldn't go anywhere near kids.
100%.
Absolutely not. Why do I need to be around children?
Yeah.
You know, and there's still so many out there on our side of the fence with this. And what's really unfortunate, I think, is that we've got sort of this massive split in the gay community where one side just happens to be significantly louder than the other. And they're also, you know what, they are the most mentally ill.
Yeah.
You know, the arguments are so irrational as for why children should be exposed to drag queens.
Yeah.
I mean, you've got the big silicone fake breasts, you've got the excessive makeup.
Yeah.
Even as a woman,
Heels, but just
you know, you could put a woman in front of those kids dressed as extravagantly as that and it would still be inappropriate.
yeah, 100%.
You know, so
yeah.
we don't let them into the strip clubs, do we?
No.
So why would a skimpy drag queen who is quite jarring to look at, I would say.
Yeah.
Why is that being put in front of toddlers? And don't even get me started on the twerking.
Oh God. Don't even get me started. I get really. I'm trying to be a good Christian, and it'll get heated for me.
Kind of classy, kind of hood.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
there's a thing that
It's a bit of a. Don't trigger me. Don't go there. But yeah, no, 100% I agree. I don't know if it's come to. I don't know if the drag queen events have landed in Sydney. I know that there was one scheduled in Melbourne. It got cancelled because of the protesters. Was there one in Sydney? I'm not sure.
They do
Good
a
luck.
lot.
Good luck coming to Sydney.
They do a lot under the radar. So there were a couple of LGBT shows in the library when I was in there having a look. So, you know, yeah, it's flexible.
Do you think it's child grooming?
I think that the transgender movement has been heavily infiltrated by pedophiles.
Yeah.
It's a natural thing. You know, predators of all walks of life, they're going to find ways to assimilate themselves and look normal and try to gain access to children however possible. So it is only a natural consequence that men being able to pose as women and be seen as legitimate in terms of identifying as a woman, that's going to be a consequence. It's just so bloody obvious to me.
Yeah.
The biggest indicator of that for me recently, and it's the most uncomfortable thing, it's so disgusting I don't know where to start in terms of unpacking it, but the chest feeding.
Stop.
The chemical lactation.
I saw that and it made me, I was holding in my vomit. So what really enraged me on a deep level was when I was reading a man talk about the experience of chest feeding. Was it the one with the really weird looking person?
Whatever, I've kind of blacked out what he looks like. It was so gross. But what he was saying is that the process of breastfeeding can be arousing and alluded to being physically aroused by
having
the
a baby,
experience.
that's arousing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I know mums, I know a lot of mothers, and they say that breastfeeding is painful.
Yeah.
So the fact that this loser idiot perv says that it's arousing, it makes me sick to my stomach. It's disgusting.
And also, you know, he's alluding to being physically aroused while handling a child, and how the excuse my French, but how
Yeah.
the fuck are we allowing these people to have unsupervised access to
children.
newborn
Yeah,
babies?
Yeah.
Where are the mothers? And again, this is what ties into my greater passion, because we saw this bloody coming during the gay marriage debate. When you're invalidating the significance of biology, what you're saying is that it's okay for a newborn baby to be removed from a mother.
Yeah.
It's unconscionable what
Yeah.
is happening now. And I'm not really entirely sure what to do about it.
Yeah.
You know, until there's the point where maybe these people start getting discovered and charged, and we sort of,
Yeah.
you know, for some reason we need hard evidence that this is a bad idea.
Yeah.
When to me it's just so obvious.
And that's sad that we do need hard evidence to convince these people that it is a shit idea.
Yeah.
That's really sad, because it's like, it's right there. Come on.
Yeah.
The fact that someone finds it arousing that,
Yeah. It's
you know,
right
the fact
there.
that you're going to allow boys to go into girls' bathrooms if they identify as, like,
Yeah.
are we really heading that way?
Yeah.
It's sad. I hope we don't.
Well, you know what? It's already started happening.
Yeah.
You know, the low-hanging fruit on this would be that couple in the US, you know,
Oh, yes.
that abused
their children. Yeah,
their
the gay couple.
adopted
Yeah,
children. My issue with that is that they were still being referred to as a gay couple. That's a pedophile.
yeah. Yeah.
They're pedophiles. They're not actually gay. So why are we talking about them as though they're, you know...
They're just a gay couple that made a little
Yeah,
mistake.
yeah,
No,
yeah,
you're a
yeah.
pedo.
No,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
intentionally went out of your way to adopt and groom those children and
Yeah.
then exploit them.
Yeah.
So...
I know a lot of people in my community, my Pacific Island community. I didn't see any of you guys at the protest. Come on, guys. Come on. Let's maybe there was one or two, but like I would love to see more Pacifica faces and Pacifica voices supporting this cause at our next protest. So I'll keep an eye out. I will definitely be promoting that. But a lot of them, a lot of my people in my community, not my community, my family and friends, they don't know what child grooming is. So what is child grooming to you? I've got a definition, but I'd love to hear yours.
Off the top of my head, I would say that it's breaking down the natural resistance a child has to a topic or a concept, to use it to desensitize them, to then exploit that child.
Right.
So whatever that may look like, whichever context, I think that's a pretty safe way to assess what that is.
Yeah.
Because really grooming is a process of desensitization
Yeah.
for exploitation.
Right.
And so when we look at what is grooming, well, arguably that chapter on anal sex from Yumi Stein's, I would say, is grooming.
Grooming,
You
yeah.
you are lowering resistance to a concept that is quite foreign. I wouldn't say that, you know, it's a natural expectation whatsoever for teenagers experimenting with sex to go straight for anal sex.
Yeah.
You know, but it's being put forward as that, you know. Anything that is attempted to be normalized is not normal, and we need to remember that
Yeah.
as we look at all this new content.
100%. There's a movie that has come out. I saw it about 2 weeks ago. I watched the really crap version online. It's called Sound of Freedom. I don't know if you've seen it. It is going to be in Hoyts here in Australia and in New Zealand, my home New Zealand, soon. So,
Oof, that would make a killing.
yeah.
There's so many of us that want to see it.
Oh, I've seen it. It's, it's intense. Yeah.
God's children are not for sale.
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, no, but it's a perfect line. It's actually based on a real person, Tim Ballard, I think his name is. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I loved his interview with Candace Owens. It was from years ago, though. So
Yeah.
I'm really glad that they made this movie. But apparently there were people that were trying to stop it from being screened, or there was just a lot of complications when people were trying to go to the cinema and to watch it. I think.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I put together some research on this.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, like I just sort of grabbed all the sort of bits and pieces of what was happening around the world with it. There were instances in the US where they wouldn't play it on the screen, and there was an issue
With the aircon.
People straight up just didn't leave the cinema till
Yeah.
they put it on the screen.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, let's go.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like Joe, what's his name? Joe, the guy that led the protest.
Oh,
He's
Smoking
like,
Joe.
Smoking Joe.
Yeah.
We will fight and we will win. I totally agree with that.
Yeah. I mean, I love that it was based on a true story. There are a lot of people that want to discredit it because obviously Mel Gibson and Jim Caviezel. Yeah,
the Passion of the Christ actor.
Yes. Obviously, they are born of Hollywood. From my perception, outside looking in, they've also been disgraced by Hollywood repeatedly.
Yeah.
They've had their reputations trashed and whatever. And anybody who knows the playbook of how these things work, public humiliation and complete loss of credibility is probably the main consequence of going against evil or the narrative.
Yeah.
So I think it's entirely legitimate. I perceive them as not caring about the consequences anymore and just being at a point where obviously there's a demand for this and people want to see this. They want to see this side of the world. And so they've gone and thrown consequences to the wind and said, stuff it.
Yeah.
Let's expose it.
Yeah. And they've made a shitload of money.
Yeah. Angel Studios.
Yeah. Cool. All right. So a lot of people, in my opinion, this is one of the questions. We've like, oh, wow. All right. A lot of people, in my opinion, have their heads in the sand when it comes to gender affirming surgery for kids. Don't even get me started on that. The sexualization of kids in schools, which we've kind of talked about.
Yeah.
What advice do you have for people or parents who don't think that this cause is worth fighting for? They think, oh, it won't happen to my kid. Oh, it's fine. It's fine. It's just whatever, you know?
Oh, yeah. It's big. It's big.
You need to...
Yeah. Look, at the end of the day, kids are wildly impressionable.
Oh, yes.
I really hate that I cannot recall his name at present, but I was putting together some research on this as well. One of the lead pioneers for gender affirming care of sorts, or just transgender advocacy, in the scientific community, he actually put out a warning in a publication recently saying that there should be a delay in terms of gender affirming care being provided to adolescent females, because it turns out they're not actually transgender and there was a negative outcome.
Yeah. Shout out to James, Culture on Fire. Amazing. I had him on my podcast before. He recommended this book called Irreversible Damage by Abigail something, and I'll share it on. It's going to be right here. Okay, just look here. Yeah, but sorry to interrupt. But yeah, it's a great book. Great book.
100%, and there's a lot of good literature and things like that out there. You know, a lot of the science hasn't changed. I was across a lot of this during the gay marriage debate, and one of the things that is widely recognised is that a lot of the indicators for gender dysphoria, if you're going to, by textbook, diagnose a child with that, it's understood and accepted that 80% of those cases will resolve during puberty. And there are publications surrounding this. And so probably the biggest injustice that's happening at the moment in regards to transgender kids with these gender dysphoria issues, is that through these gender affirming care practices, they're being denied the opportunity to go through puberty.
Yeah.
And so they're in effect, they're being denied the opportunity to reverse that condition potentially. And a lot of the literature sort of says there shouldn't be intervention unless it continues to worsen after puberty.
Okay.
And so, you know, from the ground up, I have such a grievance with the whole concept of what these people stand for in regards to children. One of which being that on one hand they'll say your genitals don't determine your gender, but then they're so desperate to correct them. It's political doublespeak in a way. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
These kids are not being raised to accept their bodies for what they are and express themselves however they want to express themselves, which I think, you know, as rational beings, pending it doesn't bleed into their friendship circles in a negative way, right? Like if you've got a kid that's quite androgynous, back in the day that was normal and we were all chill about it. It wasn't a big song and dance, and you didn't have clusters of trans kids popping up in classrooms as a result of that, right? Androgyny has been a thing for the longest time, and there's nothing arguably wrong with that. And so when you're teaching kids to reject their genitals, you are sending a negative message to that child in terms of their development and their acceptance of their body as a human being. Okay, because even, you know, taking their argument, for example, it's not their fault that they feel like they're born in a different body.
They feel disconnected from their... Yeah.
Exactly. And so why is the education not surrounding having those children accept what they've got and working that into their identity? Why are we advocating for such things as, you know, gender affirming care? Yeah. So it pisses me off from the get-go.
Yeah.
You know, and then just the medical dangers, hormonal treatments in general, you spike your risk of cancer. There's so many different things that are a consequence of that. And so what really kind of gets me upset about this is that the topic's getting quite tired. And we're not, I suppose, as a collective on the left or the right, leaning into the science surrounding this. And I think it's really quite important. You know, and credit to where it's due, lots of people do. They'll talk about the dangers of intervening hormonally and hormone replacement therapy and all that sort of stuff. But it's not really enough.
Yeah.
Like, we need to look at this from, it's like a multilateral kind of approach. You know, it's not just the gender dysphoria that's a blanket problem. It's, as a society, how do we respond to kids who have that? Why are we not giving them the space to experience puberty? Why are we making it seem like puberty is the end of the world?
Yeah.
It's not. And obviously those kids would require psychological oversight as they go through things like that. But that doesn't mean that we should attempt to stop it. It just means that that support should be provided to those kids, you know? And so it's just a mess. It's a mess.
Yeah.
And, you know, when you're looking at 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds with their parents that are obviously pushing a very sinister form of Munchausen by proxy,
Yeah.
you know, waving their little trans kids around, where is the consent, you know?
Yeah.
I don't think...
Children can't consent.
No, they can't.
No.
And, you know, the glaringly obvious truth for me is that gender and expression of gender and sexuality is an adult concept.
Thank you. I've been saying this since episode 1, guys.
Yeah.
I said this in episode 1.
That's an adult concept. And so what you're saying when you push these things on kids and you try to legitimize kids who are experiencing these and dabbling in adult concepts, when you say that they can consent to a sexual concept, the next logical consequence is what else can they consent to?
Yeah, 100%.
And that's the underlying warning.
Well, then, you know, the first thing that came to my mind was MAPS. And I remember watching your podcast. I forgot which podcast it was. and you brought up a really interesting, I mean, you touched on it briefly. And MAPS, and I and a lot of others disagree, but it was just about MAPS who haven't developed mentally in terms of their sexual preference, or they haven't developed the maturity for their sexual preference, or something along those lines. For me, MAPS is a pedo, but
no, what I was
I get a lot of comments on my YouTube, people defending MAPS, but I don't even give them any attention.
No, I don't even call them MAPS, they're pedophiles.
Oh, they're pedos? Okay.
Yeah. So,
okay, wrong. Okay, my mistake. I take that back. My apologies. I take that back.
Yeah, no, so I was making a distinction between sexual sadists and garden variety pedophiles.
Yeah.
So, you know, in society, you've got a whole different cluster of weirdos, and sexuality is not a easy thing to define, especially in these areas, because there's so much, and rightfully so, shame surrounding these, because we shouldn't be, I don't even want to indulge it, but there is a distinction. And I think that there is a niche group of pedophiles, and I was watching a doco on it a while ago, I wish I could recall what it was, but there were pedophiles on there that were saying that they would never actually harm a child and that they want help. Not offending, they're not offenders, right? But for the purposes of exploring the topic, they were saying, I hate the way I am. So many people born with this affliction, born with being what I would attribute to garden variety, sort of pedophilia, where at some point as they're growing up, usually I think it was between the age of 11 and 13, what they're attracted to doesn't catch up with their age.
Okay, that makes sense.
And so that's really what I was saying. There's a sort of, there's something that happens, and there's an area I think that should be studied in terms of how that progresses in childhood, because it illustrates to me that there's a chemical problem that could perhaps be resolved. And what we want in the world is obviously less pedophiles, not more. And so that was giving merit to that. But, you know, also the fact is that a lot of pedophiles do kill themselves. Not everybody is sort of a one-size-fits-all, I'm going to go out and sort of hurt children. And I don't advocate for the normalisation of that whatsoever. There is no part of that should be normalised or accepted in society, but it needs to be dealt with, right? It's a quiet little niche, and there needs to be a method to deal with that, because what you have when you don't acknowledge people with that affliction is offenders.
Okay.
So, you know, massive grey area.
Yeah.
Massive. And then you've got the sexual sadists that obviously have no standards, and they'll go and abuse anything for the thrill.
Yeah.
And that's the other dark side. So.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you for sharing that. Like, I really, okay, we'll move on. But thank you. Okay, so I'm a Kiwi. Yes. I can't vote in Australia, so I'm not too invested in politics here. This is totally off topic. We're putting that to bed. We're putting that whole conversation to bed.
It's very uncomfortable.
Yeah. But we're going to move on. But I'm a Kiwi. I can't vote in Australia, so I'm not too invested in politics here. But can you share anything about The Voice and what that is all about? Because I've been seeing it all over social media. Vote no against The Voice. Vote, do I need to go to another protest?
Okay, so
I want to.
From the ground up, there is a common playbook in Australian politics, and that is there'll be knee-jerk reactions to something. You know, fires will be stoked in society to create a polarity between two set things without all of the information being present. We had that with COVID. We had that with the vaccines. We knew the end goal was to do mandatory vaccinations. The narrative did not actually match up with that until a set point. Okay. So as we were arguing against this, knowing full well how obvious it is, the rest of society was like, well, you're an idiot because there's no evidence of that yet. Mm-hmm. The Voice, I think, is having a similar problem, though I would say not as complex, where, you know, Albanese's government's gone, we need an enshrined voice to Parliament. And we're going, oh, we know where that leads, which is a discretionary mechanism within the Constitution, which means that all of our freedoms can potentially be derailed if this is done incorrectly. But no information has been given. Now, I think that it's on us to actually take a step back from the noise of this debate, which is really just tossing up all different things to do with Aboriginality. What we need to do is say, you need to show us exactly what this mechanism looks like and where the limitation is. We must have the boundaries clear to us before taking this to a referendum. Okay. You know, and then, you know, he's forced to show his hand and we can see, oh, so it is a discretionary mechanism and a Trojan horse like we say it is. You know, but he's selling it to us without actually putting it in its true form. So really any Australian or non-Australian who's in a position to talk about this or vote on this needs to actually say, no, I'm not going to vote yes until you give me the due diligence of what it actually means. And if I can see what it actually means and I then decide that that's true and correct and what I want for society, then you will get my vote. But otherwise it's a hard no. Yeah. You know, and the other thing I have an issue with is that it seems that like they frame it in such a way as though you can't say no to this unless you're Aboriginal. But then look at the way they treat the Aboriginals who say no to this, you know, calling them Uncle Toms and coconuts and all this sort of stuff. It's crazy to me. Yeah. So, yeah, it's very ugly.
So that's the Voice in a nutshell, basically.
Yeah, they won't prove it because there's something to hide. If there was nothing to hide, they'd put what it looks like in front of people. You know, and it's, like I said, we need to demand the burden of proof. We won't react to this until you show us what it is, and you can get stuffed unless you show us what it is. Yeah. So.
Great, thank you. But that brings us to the end of the podcast because time's running out. Nice. So, but I'd love to do another episode again. Anytime you want to come into the studio, we can make that happen. Yeah. I'd love to have you again because I've really enjoyed our conversation tonight.
Oh, thank you.
Do you have any final words you want to say to the camera?
Not really. Hi. That's about the extent of it. Thanks for coming.
Thank you for listening. Thank you so much, everyone. I need water. Yeah. I need this is just choking. Right, I'm choking. I can't breathe. I've had a long day, long week at work. But thank you so much, Millie. I really appreciate you. Appreciate the work that you do. Appreciate you using your voice to stand up for what is right and for being a really fearless, courageous, articulate, very intelligent woman. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Woo! Give it up for Millie.